Eric Mangini.
It's been too long.
Coach?
Good to see you, Coach. How are you?
You getting excited?
Handshake.
But yeah, I'm sure you do. Every day, just shake your hand.
Absolutely.
Are you excited for the draft? You get excited? Do you do you get nervous? Do you get anxious? Do you remember being in the war room?
Do I get nervous or anxious now? No,
You know
I'm not nervous at all, or anxious or any of those things.
Nice and relieved.
Yeah, and even on draft day, especially in the first round, you've done so much work. You've discussed the players over and over again. You've gone through every situation. If you've done that right, then you should be fine. Just follow the board.
All right. I'm going to follow this board because that's what they're telling me. 36 hours to go until the NFL draft on Fox. Big draft party at Mangini's hotel room tomorrow night. I will post the address and what you can bring later on Twitter. Let's talk about Josh Rosen, though, the outspoken former UCLA quarterback facing as many questions off the field as on it. Too smart, too curious, too millennial. He joined the herd yesterday via Skype. Take a listen to this.
I'm a very opinionated guy, but I like running into people with other opinions because I want to refine my opinion. I want to come into a coach and I want him to ask me how I used to do it in the past, so that we can basically get after it and see and get something good out of it. I don't want, you don't want yes men all over the place, because that's just not how successful people function. I want to inspire kids to be good. I want to inspire kids to do good things and think for themselves. I'm going to sit down with my coach, and I expect him to bring it every single day, just like I will. I don't want my coach slacking, because I want him pushing me to be the best that I possibly can be. I'm not clocking in. I'm not clocking in, clocking out, and collecting a paycheck. I want to come in and I want to be challenged every single day and make sure that my coach is on it and cares about this thing, cares about football, and becoming the best it possibly can be as much as I do. And that's where sometimes people talk about me rubbing the wrong way of coaches and stuff. It's because I really care about this thing. I want to be the greatest of all time, the greatest of all time. And if my coach isn't on the same page as me, we might have issues. I want to be the best, and I want you to want me to be the best as well.
Coach, there's a lot said there, and a bunch of takeaways, I'm sure. If you were coaching and Josh Rosen came up to you and wanted to argue with you and find out if you wanted to be there as much as he wanted to be there, I mean, all these different questions he asked, how would you feel about coaching a kid like this coming out of school?
Well, I went through a range of emotions as I watched that clip, and I think if he had just stopped talking a little bit earlier in the clip, it would have been really good. I appreciate a guy who is going to ask questions. I think that players have the right to ask questions, and I think as a coach or a teacher, you should be able to explain the why. And when players understand the why, they do a much better job of solving problems when it doesn't look like what you had projected it to look like. So I'm okay with that. I didn't love the, I want. Yeah, ideally, the I want part you could mute a little bit in that part of it. I think the too smart knock on a kid like that, to me, that's a high-class problem, especially at quarterback. I've dealt with a lot of guys that weren't smart enough, and that's a really difficult problem to overcome. Do I think that there's going to have to be a learning curve with both the coach and player and team with a guy like Josh, who obviously has a lot of questions? Yeah, but there's a lot of problems that you have to overcome with any draft pick that you bring in.
Josh clearly means well, and I buy into the fact that he wants to be the best ever. I don't look at that differently than Tom Brady walking up to Robert Kraft shortly after he was drafted and said, "This was the best decision you've ever made," and then proving out, by the way, to make that true. I do think he, at times, like you said, maybe keeps going a little bit longer and can stumble himself.
He talks too much.
Go ahead.
No, I was just wondering, you were trying to put some fancy smart thing on it. He talks too much. It's just as simple as that.
Well, and he alluded to this, or he said this in the interview with Colin. We do sometimes put these guys in a bit of a jackpot, which is we ask them, he's doing a round of interviews because people want to talk to him. We want these guys to be honest, and then when they talk to us and they're honest, we criticize guys for that, and we criticize guys for not saying anything at all. It's a fine line. He obviously errs on the side of probably sharing more than he should. None of it to me seems malicious, though. None of it to me seems overly problematic, as long as what he's saying is genuine, as long as he's putting in the work ethic, in order to give himself the best chance to be the best ever. As long as he is open to, as when the coach says, how did you used to do it, as long as his ears and eyes are also open to, but how do you want to do it? How are we going to do it? Like, I think it can be beneficial in the long run to have that type of mind for this, but I understand why going into it, some people might be like, man, it does seem like a bit of a headache, because dealing with curious, smart people can be a pain. Like, I understand, but it also can be, to me, exceptionally rewarding.
There is no football laboratory like the NFL as far as teaching, how they install plays, how they interact with each other. Man, it's not Ohio State. It's not Alabama. It's the NFL. It's the smartest, best football players in the world. Josh Rosen, let me tell you what you don't know. This is the best coaching you'll ever receive in your life. You know the reason why they're in the pros? Because they're the best. That's why they go to pro football. You graduate from being a high school coach, you go to college, and you're in the pros. That's the best of the best. It's the best coaches, it's the best players, and there's nothing wrong with being smart. There's a bunch of smart guys there. But I'm going to tell you what they don't want. They don't want a smart ass or someone thinking that he's smarter than everyone else in the building. Now, the reason why I said he talks too much is because he don't know that much about the NFL. For him to assume that his head coach or his offensive coordinator is not going to want to be there as much as him, that's just really naive for a smart guy. All right? There's only 32 head coaches in the NFL. There's only 32 offensive coordinators. There's only 32 quarterback coaches. All of these guys take these jobs as being very, very important. And when you get a piece of raw clay like Josh Rosen, that's where you're able, the coach gets better. When Josh Rosen walked into that quarterback room, that coach got better. He's already one of the best in the business. So just give him the respect. And early in your career, it's not why. It's do what I told you to do. And then once you become an accomplished player, I'll explain to you the why part. In the NFL, that's the difference in college. Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, they can make you do something. Once you get into the pros, they can tell you to do something, but they can't make you. They explain why I want you to do this, why this works, why the tight end is flexed out like that, why we have the protection on the backside. So we want smart people, all right? You're 2 days before the draft. Get out of it. Just like we had Sam Darnold. He sat right here, didn't say nothing. You're not supposed to say anything in these times, Nick. I don't care how smart you are. Like, because all you can do is hurt your position for the draft. Realize it's going to change after Thursday night. Then he can go on to talk and do in his regular way. It's understanding where you are. And part of this draft process, he's better off saying less than saying more. And I don't mark him down because of anything he said, because I know better. I know that he doesn't know.
And when you look at the relationship with a quarterback and his head coach, or the quarterback and the offensive coordinator, it's a collaborative process. So you go through the game plan, even when you install on Wednesday, and you want the quarterback's feedback. That's important. What is he comfortable with? What is he like? When you get to Friday, you have him identify the plays that he likes the most. Because as a play caller or head coach, you want that player to be comfortable, and you want him going into the game as confident as he can be. But Chris makes a really good point. There is a difference between being smart and being a smart ass. So when it comes time to move forward, or if you get to a point where you have to agree to disagree, then the player's got to defer. And there may be times where the coach defers, but at some point you have to move on. Otherwise, it just becomes disruptive to the game planning process and more of a headache than it's worth.
Brian Billick, his call sheet after a time and period, it was like this. He had a highlighted area to the top left, and that was the Chris Carter zone. And the reason why he had that on there, because he got tired of me coming up during the game saying, Coach, when are you going to run for me? Coach, when are you going to play a call for me? But the reason why he put that sheet on there is because I used to go into the office on Tuesday. I used to be in there when they put the game plan in. The thing that Coach Mangini challenged his players to. If you want to be part of what we're doing, come in here when we're putting it in.
You didn't do it as a rookie, I'm sure.
No, you have to graduate to that. I went through many years of doing exactly what the guy taught me to do. Then after that, I was like, hey, Coach, why am I doing this? And then he began to explain to me, because that's the way I was taught at Ohio State. To learn football, learn every position, learn the responsibilities. And that's what Earl Bruce, Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, all those great coaches I played under, that's the way they taught me. I got a lot of respect for Josh. I had a lot of problem with wide receiver coaches and coordinators because I thought what I knew about football, it wasn't always the way that they saw football. But I knew who was my boss. I knew who my superior was, and I knew that they gained more respect when I watched all the film, when I came to the meetings that they were meeting on Tuesday, our off day. Then it gave me more input to what I knew football-wise, and that's the way Josh will win over his coaching staff and his teammates.
So both of you basically on the same side as far as it's a little bit distracting situation to have someone come in that's always going to sort of question what you want to do or whether you should or not. You say they shouldn't do in the first year. You should be a sponge, come in and just do what you're supposed to do. You don't think in any way this affects his draft positioning?
Well, yeah. Do I think it affects his draft positioning? I think it already has affected his draft positioning because you hear about knocks on other quarterbacks, and the knocks on Josh is he can be too smart, or maybe it's his affluent background, or he can be too opinionated. Those things all do come into play because as you want to understand, when I get this guy in the building, what's he going to be like to deal with every single day? Is this going to be a battle to get to the game plan? Is this going to be a battle to get to the plays that we want to call on Sunday? After the game's over, is he going to support what we did, or is it going to be he's throwing the coaches under the bus, my position coach didn't do this? You can have that element to it where it's a different set of problems, but it's still a problem, and it still can be hard to overcome.
And no matter where he goes, it's not the coaching staff's responsibility to make him the greatest player ever, because they can only do so much. You play a huge role in that. When New England drafted Tom Brady, it was their greatest draft pick ever, but it wasn't their responsibility to make him the greatest. It was Tom and New England and the process. Just like they talk about in Philadelphia. Josh needed to realize it's a long process to being a good player in the NFL.
And as much as Tom has done and knows, Tom knows he doesn't know everything. And he has an openness about him, even at this point in his career. And to me, that's what allows him to continue to grow.
All right, Coach, stick around. We'll see you a little bit later on in the show. Coming up, back to basketball. How about those New Orleans Pelicans? Could they actually be better without Boogie Cousins? It's next on First Things First.